Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to the JAKIB postgame show. A 28-3 annihilation by the Philadelphia Eagles. Sileo, dare I say it, is bully ball back in
Come
the city
on.
of brotherly love, baby.
Come on.
Saquon Barkley, 17 carries, 176 yards. Birds win 28-3, move to 4-2 on the season and get their first NFC East win of the year. That's Dan Sileo, host of the National Football Show, 1987 national champion on the Miami Hurricanes. We'll be joined later on by John McMullen. I'm your host, Zander Krause. Give us a follow on X, me at Real Zander. Big Sills at Dan Sileo Show, and Johnny Mac later on in the show at JF McMullen. Big Sills, everybody in the Philadelphia region is waiting for your take. What is it, my friend, after that game?
I want you to clean all your glasses off
Because
what you saw today
right now.
is a mirage.
It's a
Okay.
mirage.
When your quarterback only has to put up 136 total yards to annihilate a shitty football team like the New York Giants 28-3, it's fool's gold, but here. Let me go here with this. You can only play who's on your schedule. Barkley was an absolute force. They didn't need Hurts, really. They only needed really two things, A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley and the defense. I'm going to give the defense some love here in a second, but again, they went back and did something that was an identity for them, and that is run the ball. Saquon Barkley was a beast. That's the best I've ever seen him run the football. I mean, even in any game that I saw him play with the Giants, he came there with a purpose. And I'll tell you what, Zander, if you're Joe Schoen and if you're John Mara, you are looking at that going, how could you allow that guy to come into our house and almost, you know what they did? He didn't play the fourth quarter, basically. He could have had 250 yards in that game. And what they did was they kept him out of the fourth quarter. They even pulled Hurts because they were killing them so bad.
So before you continue, let me give you the Saquon stats, and not just today. Today he had 17 carries, 176 yards, and a touchdown. That gives him 658 rushing yards on the season, the most in Eagles history. Through the first 6 games, he surpassed Shady McCoy, who had right around 630 in his first 6 games.
Spectacular.
Pretty remarkable.
Spectacular. Hey, and I will say this. Let me go on the other side of the ball here. Man, I'll tell you what. This young defense, that's a great, dinner plate for them to be served up, and they did it. That's the best I've ever seen Kobe Dean play. 11 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs. The guy was everywhere. I mean, that's the best I've seen him play as a pro. Jalen Carter, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs. We saw – Josh Sweat has been playing really good football for the last 4 weeks. We even saw a Nolan Smith sighting. We saw a Bryce Huff sighting. I thought the linebackers and Zach Bond played well. I'll tell you this, too, about Vic Fangio. He brought pressure. Last 2 weeks, he's been bringing pressure against these quarterbacks, and that was a spectacular effort by the defense. Now, some will go, Sills, that's not a very good offense. Yeah, well, that's not the Eagles' fault. That's your problem. That's the Eagles right there showing up, playing up, and they played up to their ability, not down like they did a week ago 100%. To the Cleveland Browns. So in my opinion, this was, Zander, I take more out of this defensively because, and again, are the Giants worse than the Browns? Probably. But what the Eagles didn't do was this game, they didn't play down to that like they did a week ago. They played up and they completely shut that football team down. I mean, I don't know what the total number was when it came to total yards there, but they absolutely just beat the living hell out of them. I mean, They had 100. Did they really only have 119 total yards in that football game?
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. Saquon Barkley had more yards himself than the entire Giant offense did. So their defense really played well. I thought the corners played well. Neighbors was kind of a factor, but then he wasn't. They didn't really need Hurts to be special in this game, and he wasn't. He made a couple critical plays in the game. Once again, too, you know what he did? He didn't turn the football over. Second straight game now. There's no turnovers. And they took care. This right here, when you're playing a crappy team, take care of business. This is how you take care of business. Unlike they did a week ago against the Browns, they did it. 28-3. The game was never really close. And right now, you know, you move on to the next opponent. So, my opinion, they played up to their – if you're going to take anything away from this, they played up to their ability today instead of down to the opponent's ability.
Great takeaways there from Big Sills. I agree. Look, and I think, Sills, here's the one thing I want to point out, because I get when you beat the Browns and you don't want to overreact. You're starting to see trends develop within this season for this football team. You get a super chat here from Philly Dogs. I'll get to all super chats today. Appreciate it. He says, back-to-back games, no touchdowns allowed, 3 great games by the defense, and 1 all right one versus the Atlanta. The Georgia boys are finally playing well. That's a trend within the season right now, and it's a fact, as you point out. Yep. 2 great games by the defense, really 3 good games, and then you add in that Atlanta game where they held them pretty. I think it was 22 points they gave up in that game. That defense is really coming alive, Sills. Today, 8 sacks, as you pointed out. 2 for Nakobe Dean, 2 for the greatness of Jalen Carter, 1 for Nolan Smith, which, by the way, that guy's starting to get off the milk carton. He is showing up in Philly. Bryce Huff gets on the board. Josh Sweat, and even the third-round developmental player, Jalix Hunt, logs one in the fourth quarter there. That's a good showing for the defense, man. It really is. And I know you're playing the Giants, but like you just said, you don't want to play down to your competition, and they did not today. They blew them off the page today.
One of the things that you always see in college, and I use a college analogy here, one of the reasons why you see blowouts, Zander, you see a team beating a team 66-0, and you're like, why would that guy keep their starters in, and why would they keep scoring touchdowns? Well, you're teaching your football team never to lay off the gas pedal no matter who the opponent is, and you never want to have a football team ever go up and down and play up and down to the competition. That's why a lot of coaches in college do that. And in the pros, it's a little bit harder because the talent's a little bit more spread out. But this is the thing again. Last week, you know, people are going to go like this. What can you really take away from this with the Giants? Well, they played up to their ability. Okay, no turnovers, like you said. You know, outside of the Buck game in the last month, the defense has played well. You're seeing guys emerge. You're seeing a front seven come around. I do think this, though, too. I think Vic's putting them in really good positions to be successful, too.
Yes,
and that's bringing pressure. And you see the pressure being brought in the linebackers. You know what is becoming evident? Nakobe Dean can rush the passer.
Yes, he can.
He can rush the passer.
Here's what I'm looking for now, because you bring up a good point about Vic, and he's clearly done a very good job. He's obviously a dominant force when he doesn't fear the quarterback. Remember what his scheme was, though, against Baker Mayfield? Baker dissected that easily. Now, next week, you have Joe Burrow. Now, they're not the greatest football team in the world, but that's a great quarterback. I'm going to be very interested to see how Vic Fangio calls the defense versus a quarterback like that, because clearly Deshaun Watson and Daniel Jones were of no match for what Vic Fangio wanted to do.
Well, again, you're looking at how many sacks today did they have, you said?
8 sacks today, man.
That's 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 13 in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're starting to pick up the pressure. And I think, Zander, that's also why you're starting to see some really good coverage when it comes to the backers and corners, is because you're seeing that high volume of pressure, and that's making it very difficult. Now, again, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, 2 quarterbacks who have struggled the last 2 weeks. I mean, not the greatest sample size that you can really sit there and really hang too much on. But once again, you always have – I always tell people, that's not the Eagles' fault that the Giants have crappy personnel on that side. Play up to your ability and finish the job. And that's exactly what they did.
Yep, no doubt about it. I want to thank Jason A-Team with the big super chat here. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Got a big crowd in here as always. Birds are 4-2, everybody, and they moved to the top of the NFC East. I think the Commanders are in the 4:00 window today, so we'll monitor that game as well. Look like they're going to be the number one competition in the NFC East. Jason A-Team checks in and says, "Let's go, boys. That's what you can have when you run the damn ball. Bully ball is back, baby. Bully ball is back." Do
you worry about the volume of carries and touches for a guy like that? Hey, by the way, Gainwell almost had.
I got to be honest with you. I'm not worried about him right now. I mean, he comes in today. He sat the whole fourth quarter. I mean, He had 180 yards nearly today running. He did with the passing yards. He had 11 receiving yards as well. He looked fresh. I mean, it wasn't a crazy workload for him today to get those type of numbers. 17 carries, 2 catches. I mean, he touched the ball under 20 times. I feel good about that.
The offense ran for 270 yards today.
Yeah. Kenny Gainwell had a nice day as well.
Hey, he did 56 yards, a tick under 60 yards. I mean, without hold on. I see people in here. Fred Johnson had a rough day. Well, yeah, he did. I think he had a rough start, but I think he settled down. Anytime an offensive group has a game where you run the ball for 270 yards and your running back is at 177 or something like that, and a touchdown and completely dominated the game, Fred couldn't have played that awful because a lot of that came on his side and also on Lane's side, and there were wide gaping holes there. And by the way, Cam Jurgens got beat up in that game early, but I thought he settled down. Remember, Dexter Lawrence had 2 sacks in that ball game, dude. That guy's got 9 on the year. But you know what I thought they did, Zander? I thought they isolated blocked really well on the giant linebackers, and they created some lanes in the middle. And there were a couple times, if there weren't some arm tackles, Barkley could have went to the house and hit his head on the goalpost at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, no doubt. Sills, here's what I'll say, because I want to be consistent, especially with what I talked about all week. I came into this game saying I think this game is going to be close because the Eagles haven't proved dominance, and I thought the Giants were better than expected. They blew them off the page today on both sides of the football, and I got to give the team credit. I know the Giants suck, and they clearly proved how bad they were today. But I thought all week that this was going to be a close game, and they really ran away with this.
But that's not a terrible. But your take, no, Zander, your take going into the game was by what they were performing at. So you're not sitting here going like this. You're surprised right now. Well, so is everyone else surprised.
I mean, I feel good. I think
they put in there. Remember what I tell people about having opinions, especially in football. Your opinion is going to constantly change due to the fact of how the team performs. The team was wobbling the first 5 games of the year. Nobody can dispute that, and I don't think anybody disputes that. This is the first 4-quarter football game. And you know what else they did in this game? They didn't get pass happy. They saw what was working and stuck with it and said, the Giants can't stop the run. One of their Achilles heel going into this game was what? They couldn't stop the run, and they blew them off the line of scrimmage. So guess what? The opinion changes on one game. We'll see over the next 2 now if this becomes more of a trend offensively in how they do this. So, again, Zander, it's not – everybody said that this would be close. Everyone thought that this would be a close game. Well, because they haven't played up to their abilities.
Sills, bully ball, bully ball, bully ball. Bring it back, Nick. You see how, look, you're missing 2 offensive line for most of that game. Mekhi Becton went
Wait a minute. Is this the no-holds defense now again?
They might be back, Sileo. The no-holds
defense is back. That I don't believe.
Hey, today, 8 sacks, no touchdowns, 3 points given up, a measly
119 total yards.
119. Sileo, that's I think the best D1 school in the country would put up more yards than that.
I'll make a point to you, though. Jalen Hurts is the best wishbone quarterback I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you want a guy who can run and not throw? That's your guy right there. Boy, I tell you, man.
Oh, come on. That throw to A.J. Brown for the touchdown,
that was a fantastic play in the game.
That was a fantastic throw.
What a phenomenal wishbone quarterback. Unbelievable. 136 total yards. I thought I was watching K-State versus Kansas. I loved it. It was great.
I'll say this: that throw was perfect. I've been critical of the quarterback. I'm not going to be critical when it doesn't call to be critical. That was
That
a
was all AJ
perfect.
Brown.
That was a
All
perfect
AJ. You see him
throw.
fucking get the separation the way he did in the back of the end zone.
Right in the
That
basket
guy,
on
he
the
actually
run.
pushed off, but hey, man, great play by AJ. AJ, that was awesome, man.
Right,
Hurts, yeah, sure, all right.
right in the basket on the run for Jalen Hurts.
Oh,
But
so Hurts is back
you
now,
brought up a
right?
good point there. You brought up a good point there. They didn't. You're right. They stuck with the run today. Hurts was 10 of 14. Sills. I don't remember the last time Hurts had that few passing attempts in a
That's
game.
okay.
I'm
They
completely
had an
good with it.
identity in that game, and they stuck to it.
And I think they should stick to that for more this year. You're missing 2 offensive linemen like you were in that game, and you still ran the ball down that throat against a pretty good defensive line that we talked about coming into the game. Now, they did have some sacks that the Giants deal. I think they had 4 or 5 sacks in the game. They had 4 on Hurts, and then I think they had 1 more on Kenny Pickett. But, I think that's an identity that we talked about the lack of identity with this team, not knowing what they wanted to do week in and week out. I think it's right there in front of you.
But identity is something that is trending, and you see it, not one game wonders here. So we have to, let's see how. Now, again, I will say this to you on what people are identifying here. There's no doubt that the defense is starting to pick it up. You see it, Zander.
No doubt.
They're picking it up a little bit. And by the way, you know who else is starting to pick it up a little more too? Jalen Carter. I'm starting to see a couple games now where you're seeing him as a force in there. So, I mean, I liked what they did. People are going to go like this. Well, Hurts wasn't. Well, that's not what that game dictated. Dude, if I know that I can keep crushing you with a knockout punch and you can't stop me from punching you in the face and you're not going to duck, I'm going to keep punching you in the face. This is the first time that they stuck to something that they knew what was working instead of getting pass happy. How many times when they got pass happy did they go 3 and out? They went 3 and out when they got pass happy. When they started running the ball, dude, nobody loses football games when you run the ball for 270 yards. Nobody.
No doubt. And that's why I think the Eagles should stick with that. So for anybody saying they wanted to see more from Jalen Hurts, get that crap out. If I see that every single week from Jalen Hurts, I'll be happy, one, and forget my happiness as a thing. This team will go far in this league because
they beat up by 25 with a guy throwing 14 passes.
There's not many teams in the league, Sills, that'll be able to stop that running game if you attack them like that every single week.
Do you understand that that's exactly how the Eagles are coaching him, is how they're coaching Josh Allen in Buffalo? You don't have to be a superstar every freaking game. You have to do what is needed to win a game. They beat the team by 20. Get this. How many times, honestly, Zander, if you really put it, an NFL game where a quarterback only has 14 attempts and you beat them by 25 points.
That's
like unbelievable in today's game when you have a point differential of 3 points.
But Sills, when you look at this football team from afar, you look at the guys they have on the offensive line, you look at the quarterback and what the strengths of the quarterback are, all signs point to that being the best method of attack. Build on that. Make that your identity. And here's what I'll say. If they don't make that their identity, I have real questions about who's pulling the strings in this organization, because it's so if it's this obvious to me, and I think all of our great viewers right here on JAKIB Sports, how could it not be obvious to the coach? Now, the owner wants a pass-happy offense, and I think that's where it comes from, but I hope they stick with this as an identity.
But how much of this was wanting to get Barkley the touches and realizing once he started dominating the football game? Do you think this was an epiphany by them? Look what we're doing here, because, Zander, they really haven't done that. They've got away from it, especially in the Buck game and in the Atlanta game. They kind of got away from that stuff instead of just feeding the kid. Man, like I told you, I made the comparison. He's kind of like Kyle Schwarber. Boom, boom, a couple yards here, a couple yards there, and then a 55-yarder down the middle of the field. He had 2 huge runs today in the football game. I mean, dude, if they run the ball like that, there's no question. That game looked like 2022, did it not?
It did, and it's the first time they blew out an opponent like that, I believe, since the Miami game.
Yeah.
of last year, which was very early in the season. It was great to see. So let's talk about Saquon Barkley. We just brought him up, and he's been a topic here in the start, but I want to ISO on him and talk about him. He was 17 carries, 176 yards today, and a touchdown with a 55-yard a long run of 55 yards. I'll say this about Saquon. He looks young and spry. He does not look like a dude who's had however many carries he's had 5-6 years in the league. Most of the time you see these running backs are beaten down a little bit by this point. This dude looks like he's running the best I've ever seen him run.
Absolutely. I saw somebody in here make the comparison to Christian McCaffrey. He's nowhere in Christian McCaffrey's league because McCaffrey is also a 100-catch guy in the season.
Well, they're different type of players.
Yeah, but he's not in his room. This guy's the lead. This guy can lead the league in rushing and also have 1,000 yards receiving and 100 catches. He's a more complete player. However, I do think he's a better between the tackle runner than McCaffrey. And Henry's the best. And you could probably put, by the way, Aaron Jones is also with Minnesota kicking ass with him up there since he came down from Green Bay. So, and you have Alvin Kamara that's in that conversation too. But there is no doubt the MVP of this football team has been Saquon Barkley, and I was wrong about him. Zander, I mean, the impact that he had on this football team being put around better football players, there's no doubt that's the kid I never saw in New York. I saw him one time in New York his rookie year, but I never saw him after that. I saw spurts of him looking pretty good, but that guy right there, that's the second pick in the draft. Yep. Because I'll tell you what, you put him out there with talented guys like that around him, he is a force, and he is a hell of a running back.
Sells, I hope the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't say this with an ego because I believe I'm correct. I hope they see this game like I do because I do not think it's a coincidence, Sills, that Jalen Hurts goes 10 of 14, no turnovers. He had 3 total touchdowns today on the same day that they commit to the run and bully the Giants off the field. That is this team's identity. And if it's not, it's what it should be. I hope they commit. There's no coincidence, Sills. Jalen Hurts, turnover-free football, made great plays, a good throw down the sideline when it was opened up with the running game, 10 of 14, 114 yards, a touchdown, and what do you have? 7 carries for 22 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a perfect Jalen Hurts game.
He's had 2 in a row now, actually, okay? There's 2 in a row Jalen Hurts games, 250 yards passing. Remember I said 33? Remember also what I said to you, Zander? And I keep telling people, and I want them to always remember this. If Jalen Hurts throws the ball for more than 25 times or you're up near 35 or 36 times, this team will lose. If you're around 25 carries, you're around 25 passing attempts, you're going to win handily, okay? Well, it was 14-11 under because what that means is they realized that they could run the ball against that football front. I'll tell you this. That's the formula to beat the Cowboys. If the Cowboys can't stop the run, why would I throw the ball against the Dallas Cowboys when they have 2 all-pro corners when they know you can't stop the run? Most of the time, the formula is going to be to play bully ball. And if they can continue that, by the way, they're doing it with a makeshift offensive line in numerous places now, too. Yeah. The right guard now, Becton's got a concussion. You got Fred Johnson. So you got 2 backups in now in the starting 5 in your offensive line, and they were still able to run the ball for 270 yards. Dude,
I thought Fred Johnson settled in nicely.
They did. After a rough start at the beginning of the game, okay, they settled down because you know why? They started getting committed to running the ball. Kenny Gainwell, as you mentioned, ran a hell of a game. I mean, look at that. Zander, if you look at the stats, between Kenny Gainwell and Saquon Barkley, you had 240 yards rushing.
Saquon had 17 carries for 176. Kenny Gainwell had 13 carries for 56 yards. Jalen Hurts had 7 carries for 22, and Will Shipley had 8 carries for 15.
69 total.
I mean, that's 45 carries right there, Sills. 45 carries.
Isn't that 22?
That's the recipe for this football team. If this team commits to this recipe, this team will be a force all year long.
Now, remember, let's temper it because the Giants and the Browns Okay.
Yeah, but that Giants defense hasn't been bottom of the league.
But here, let me finish with this, though. You're building up what you do well, and you're figuring out what you don't do well. Okay. You're not going to beat a team from the pocket, but what you're going to do is you're going to beat a team with multifaceted offensive attack and plays. You're going to find a guy coming across the middle. You're going to be able to hit AJ down. Dude, who do you fear more on that offense right now? AJ Brown or Barkley?
Those are the two dudes you fear the most, but it's got to be Saquon at this point.
Okay. Well, that's why that thing's open on one. Hey, you want to know why AJ was single covered down that sideline for that TD catch?
Sure.
You know why? You're playing close up on the line because you're afraid Barkley's going to. Did you see what they were doing? Hey, by the way, you can say whatever you want about Fred. That big run down the sideline was over Fred's side. And did you see Cam Jurgens get out there and blow that linebacker up and secure the perimeter? That was a hell of a play out there on the corner.
Yep, no doubt about it. Big Cells, I want to ask about one more thing, and then I want to get to a couple super chats before we get to the takeaways here. And this was my one gripe with the team today. I thought it was a pretty clean game for the Eagles. I was very happy with their performance. I liked the way they bullied the Giants. The one gripe, and I'll ask you what you think of it, the first quarter scoring. Another first quarter, nothing on the board. Sills, you beat the Giants. You beat the Browns. You're 4-2. You get to late in the year, you can't have 25% of the game where you're inept on offense. You just can't have it. It's not a winning formula. They have to get it fixed. What would be your fix to this, and how big of a problem do you think it is?
I think it's an issue that these guys are scripting these plays and they're not going anywhere with them. I think that they have to have a self-evaluation of what they're doing wrong in those first 25. Think about it, Zander. After the first 25 plays or after the first 20 plays, the offense started blowing people off the ball and they started running the ball. You don't script run plays, dude. You just go ahead and run the ball. Those pass plays that they do, look at all the 3 and outs. Okay? He's not going to be effective running or throwing the football on the first 20 plays.
So are you thinking this is on Kellen? Are you thinking it's a Kellen Moore problem?
No, I think it's a collaborative thing. Okay. I think it's Nick and Kellen and Stoutland.
And how much of Jalen? How much of Jalen?
And Jalen. I think all of them are in the game. Dude, they all agree to the game plan to the start of it. This is everyone. Nick said it. It's collaborative. It's Hurts. It's me. How can the first 25 plays of a game be the worst 20? Would we not agree? 2 games in a row, the first 25 plays have been the worst 25 plays of their game for the Browns and the Giant game. It's been the worst. I mean, start faster. Dude, start faster. Run the damn ball. They should have ran the ball the entire first series. Try that. They need to reevaluate what they're doing because that's not working.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think they got to stick to that run game, and really force it down people. So it's the identity of the team. When you look at the quarterback, you look at the running back, you look at the roster, you look at the offensive line, it's very clear that that's
this is the best running attack that they have had in probably 14, 13 games. 270 yards rushing. This is probably their best effort that they have had in about 14 games, man. I mean, and it's a divisional opponent to boot. Believe me. I'll tell you this. Hey, next time you play the Giants, that Giant game is going to be a little bit more difficult because it always is, because now they know what you're going to try to do to them, and you better come up with a different game plan. Yeah, how many times? Last year,
that's where I like our advantage. You could know that
and it's at home.
You could know that the Birds are going to run the ball down your throat.
That's right.
Good luck. Good luck trying to stop that offensive line and that running back. Good luck. And that's where I think they really have to double down.
That's what they did last year. They stopped the run and they beat you.
Yeah, but they got to get away from the infatuation.
Yes, throwing the ball absolutely.
Over the field. Let it. And by the way, it's not an indictment on the quarterback.
No.
He's 25 years old. Let the dude develop.
How many times did we hear this coming out of camp? Jalen is doing what the defense is giving him. Well, let that be true then. If the defense is giving you the ground game, let the ground game dominate the game. You don't have to counter it.
No doubt. Let's get through a couple super chats here. I want to thank everybody for being here on this JAKIB postgame show. Birds moved to 4-2. Everybody, tons of super chats coming in. We'll get to them. And then on the other side of the break, I got some isolated questions for Big Sills. I want his take on Quinyon Mitchell. I want his take on Nolan Smith. I want his take on Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat, all guys showing up on the defensive side of the football. And I'll also get, by the way, you're looking at a national champion starter defensive tackle in the Hurricanes. I'll get his take on our 2 D tackles who seem to be starting to show up in a big way. Let's roll through a couple of these super chats here at Big Sills. We got Philly Dogs. We got Jason 18. A second one from 18. Appreciate it, Jason. Jason says, did you see how everyone had their hand in the dirt instead of standing up? It made a hell of a difference, and Quinyon's better than Slay. Your thoughts on that hand in the dirt comment from Jason 18, Big Sills?
Jason, do you know how you know that they played well today, the defense? Count the men that are standing around the pile. When you see 4 or 5 or 6 guys, that's a mentality to want to get to the ball. The entire Eagle defense, almost every play today was around the pile, which means guys were trying to make plays, which means the mentality and the effort was there for them at the start of the football game. They played a 60-minute football game defensively.
Yep.
The offense, and by the way, people will go like this, man, the slow starts. I don't really think it's slow starts. I think it's poor game planning.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, those plays are just getting in the way. But that defense showed up with attitude. They ran to the ball. I thought a lot of guys played really well. I mean, all across the board. I thought Vic Fangio had his best day as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's been really good recently. Vic Fangio really been dialing up some good defenses, good stuff there. Jalen checks in. Jalen Mad Day checks in. These are pros. You need to develop young players. Better get reps first, Shipley, Ringo, when you're up 25. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we got some good reps, valuable reps from some of those young players today late in that game. Jalen, appreciate the super chat. My brother Bearded Willie checks in. Member chat. No, Sills. You and I and John and Zander all week said we thought this game was going to be close and Jones was playing well. This win was dominant. Bearded, I will 100% agree with that. Big Sills, your response.
Yeah, absolutely. And but Bearded. Now, not anybody, even the point spread people and the people in Vegas and Atlantic City thought this was going to be a blowout. Nobody did because of the way that the Giants, and by the way, they build castles in Vegas and Atlantic City for one reason, because we're wrong most of the time. So for them to even put the point spread at what it was, that's what you know. Those guys put the money down and they put the bag of money down on this whole thing here. So you knew that this was going to be a tougher game. Well, they did something that they haven't done in about 13 games. You know what that is? They played up to their ability and not down to the ability and talent of the opposing team. They actually came in and took care of business today. And by the way, I think this was a big win for their coach. I think that the coach going into this with all the crap that went on last week, I think he comes out of this looking well. And I think he comes out of this pretty good right here because the football team did everything they had to do when it came to really playing well. I'll tell you this that I have a little problem with, though, and this comes into talent a little bit. Special teams 3 weeks in a row now has had some gaffes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to keep an eye on because you don't want to keep it going where your special teams is making mistakes. I mean, even on the kickoff of the football game, they lined up off sides. Yeah. I mean, you gotta kind of be in there a little bit where you're kind of being focused and all. And again, 3 weeks in a row, there's been some mistakes on the special teams. I'll tell you something that we're starting to discover. If Britton Covey comes back, I don't know if he's going to beat out Cooper DeJean. That guy can punt return.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, that guy is tough to get down on the ground. And I like the way he has in the punt return. That guy, he's not Devin Hester, but I'll tell you what. He looks pretty good back there returning those punts for them.
No doubt about that. He for sure does. And I'll say this about special teams. It's a good point. You don't expect special teams to win you games, but you don't want them to cost you games. And that's where I think they got to clean up some of those problems. Let's get to a couple more super chats before we get to our break. Appreciate everybody. Dan checks in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Dan. He says, didn't play down to their competition, and that's all you can ask for on a day like this. Defense looking good and run game looks amazing. Giants are terrible, but their D-line isn't. Good sign. I agree, Dan, 100%. That Giants defense is not that bad. I liked what we did today. Big Sills, your response.
Dan, that is a spectacular take. You're not going nuts on the Giant win, but what you are going nuts on is how they approach the game to get the W, to put the point differential up. That's exactly how you look at a game like that. Hey, Dan, you're doing the same thing I'm doing. Hey, I don't give a shit that the Giants suck. That's not my problem. That's a Giant and Joe Schoen problem. What I got to worry about is my team not playing down and sucking in a game like that. My quarterback had 14 attempts. So what? Hey, guys, you're going to hear people go, I didn't see a lot out of Jalen. That's not what you're looking for here. This is not a beauty contest like in college football where you've got to win sexy. Dude, you can win a football game 3-2. No one's going to remember in 2 weeks how you beat the New York Giants. They're going to know you beat them 28-3. I mean, guys, this is nothing like that. I mean, go win the game. I don't care how it looks.
Yep, no doubt about it. Great response there from Big Sills. Brian Fleming checks in. Brian, appreciate it. He said Hurts is still a single read quarterback. If it's not there, he tries to bail right and take sacks. He was missing wide open receivers today. Can't see the middle of the field. It's a problem that will haunt us. Big Sills, I think the way to mitigate some of that and to allow Jalen to continue to develop is what they did today. Rely on that offensive line. Rely on that running game. Let the young quarterback see the field. It's his first time calling protections. It's his first time without Jason Kelce. It's going to be a process. Let him go through that and learn through it. That's my remedy for it. What's yours?
Brian, you saw the missed touchdown pass to Barkley. He was wide open because Jalen held the ball too long, right?
Yep.
That's what you saw. That's his struggles because he holds the ball too long. And he doesn't process the information as quick as other guys because he doesn't set his feet. He didn't set his feet back there, and he didn't get back in time to set his feet. He's got fundamental flaws back there in the pocket, Zander. Like, he doesn't really step up well sometimes in the pocket, and he rolls a lot, and he really doesn't have a real good firm grip on the pocket and looking down the field. And that Barkley was wide open. Dude, he just had to flick it out to him, and he could have thrown it. You always know you throw it back into the blitz. They blitz from that side. How do you not know that? Unless he thought the blitz was coming from some other place from more inside. But that guy, he threw right back into it. Barkley was wide open for an easy touchdown, and he missed it. Now, again, that's nitpicking. But nitpicking is going to happen in the playoffs. That's when you're going to nitpick, because nitpicking – inches come down to those kind of plays when you're playing against those really good teams. Now, maybe again, like I said in the pregame show, maybe this is where this team is right now, where Kansas City was a year ago, trying to find themselves, get over the bumps.
I think that's a little lofty, but I get the sentiment of what you're saying.
Okay. And get this. Didn't I say that this was going to be a little rocky and bumpy and you're going to start to see them come around? I'll tell you what. People always, and I killed them on my show, the National Football Show, when I say, well, you got the defense is, coming around, they're ranked 20. Well, I think you're seeing signs of that a little bit here. Now, again, I'm going to take what Brian did, and I'm going to listen to you, Brian, and you're right. Browns and Giants, let's not go crazy. However, you are putting up good efforts. Well, better effort today than you did against the Giants. This was by far more takeaways today than there was against that Browns. I thought the Browns effort wasn't very good. I think this effort is a lot better.
Yep, no doubt about it. Let's keep rolling. A couple more super chats before we get to the break. Appreciate everybody. We go, if you give 10, 15, $20, I'm going to get to you first. So thank you guys for the supers today. Much appreciated. And from anybody that doesn't super, we appreciate your viewership as well. Surgical checks in. It's been obvious that need to run for a year now, and they have a game like this and go back to the go ball offense instead of getting into a rhythm and running the ball. Surgical, that's the fear. The fear is that they go back to what they were doing, and so
they are going to go back to throwing the ball. They are going to go back to it. Why?
I just don't get, man. I don't get even. I don't.
Yes, you do. There's $51 million in salaries. There's $51 million. You're not paying those guys not to go to them, dude.
All right, well, you're paying. It's a salary cap. You're paying somebody anyway. Win the damn game.
Nobody has $51 million.
Relying on my $100 million offensive line.
$51 million. How many teams have $51 million in wide receivers? I can't name any. I can't name one.
A.J. Brown had 5 catches for 89 yards and a
My
touchdown
point,
today.
we're talking about going back and throwing the ball, not running the ball.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm saying, though, if you're going to pay the damn money anyway, do what you need to do to win the most amount
That's
of games.
not how they operate, though.
I know it's not. You're right. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just arguing against the team who seems to have a philosophy that they will stick you no matter what, when all the common sense in the world, all the eye test, everything about this football team, Dan, points to run the ball behind that beastie O-line.
This is why we're like this today, Zander, after the win. Wow. They did what they were supposed to do. They haven't done that for a month and a half of football, man. Now they did it. The fear is, like Surgical says, the fear is they're going to go back to throwing the ball. Dude, Surgical, all you need to know on how Zander is upset about this is the first 25 plays of the last 2 weeks or maybe the entire season. You know what that is? They throw the ball more in those first 25 plays than they run the ball. Am I right? You know they do. It's 3-1. And then when they get off it, then they start running it. Then it opens up. Then they get away from running the ball. And then they bring the opposing teams back in. You're right, man. Look at this. You threw 14 passes today. 14 passes and you crushed the team. If you don't know that that's not it tells you who you are, there's something wrong with you as a coaching staff.
No doubt. And it might not be the coaching staff. It might be coming from upstairs. One more super chat. We'll get to our commercial break. Bearded Willie checks in. I know a lot of people have written off Nolan Smith. He has a high motor and never quits on a play. His hustle is always there. He caused that sack for Carter today.
That is not true.
I believe he'll be great. Bearded, thank you for the super chat. I will say Nolan has looked a lot better in recent weeks. He's a young player. Got to give him time. Big Silver response.
Fair. To sit there and say that people have written him off and he has a high motor and he never quits on plays is ridiculous. This is the first 2 weeks that I've seen a sighting of him. And you too. You're making that up. And Bearded, I got you, and I understand that you want this kid to be successful. But he's played 2 games where you've seen him on the ledger where you're seeing numbers here. Let's see the kid continue to play. Let's see if he can be consistent. Because at the end of the day here, that's not a true comment. Okay, he has a high motor. I saw a guy knock the shit out of him and put him on his back. So before we start sitting here giving Nolan Smith a lot of kudos, let's see him as he plays through the rest of the year. Will he be able to handle 17 games? Will he be able to handle 900 reps? What is his production going to look like late in the year? Is he going to know how to be a pro? We'll find out as the season goes on.
I will say small trend developing with him. 2 games. And Sills, he started the game today on first down. He is a much better 3-down player than Bryce Huff is.
Yes.
By far. And you wouldn't really think so because Nolan's pretty undersized. He sets that edge pretty well and is not a liability in the run game like Bryce Huff was.
I am not going to sit here and tell people that I'm sold on that defense yet. When you beat the Giants, you really had a great effort today. Let's expand on it. You didn't have a great effort last week. I didn't think that was that great an effort. I thought it was an okay football game. You haven't played really great in any way, except maybe Atlanta, where you held them to 18 points or something like that. I mean, but as far as I'm concerned, I still think the defense has a long way to go, but it's good to see Vic Fangio bringing pressure. The most impressive guy on the field was actually Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about him after the break as well. Let's get to that break. I'm going to get to everybody's super chats by the end of the show. That's my promise. I got a lot coming in, and we're a little bit tight on time with Johnny Mack coming up. So let me get to the commercial break now. Appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. You're watching the JAKIB postgame show right here on JAKIB Sports. That's Dan Sileo. I'm your host, Zander Krause. We'll have John McMullen live from MetLife Stadium joining us in a few. I'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody. Stay tuned.